Exponential growth is promised as the most reliable way to build wealth. But if you've ever actually started investing, you've probably noticed a frustrating reality. You put your money in, you wait, and the growth comes to a dead stop. The early results are incredibly tiny. To understand why this happens and why you shouldn't panic, we need to run a test comparing the two basic types of financial growth: simple interest versus compound interest. This 30-day calendar grid tracks simple interest. Imagine I hand you a full 8-slice pizza today. Tomorrow, I hand you another full pizza. Day 1, 8 slices. Day 2, 16 slices. You get a fixed, predictable amount every single day, and it stacks up in a perfectly straight line. Now let's look at the compound timeline. I give you 1 slice of pizza on day 1, but the rule changes. Every single day, your total slices double. Day 2, your 1 slice turns into 2. Day 3, those 2 turn into 4. Because simple interest starts by handing you a whole pizza right away, that linear path appears to be winning by a landslide. This exact illusion is why new investors look at their accounts and quit. Surviving the first stretch of a compounding timeline is psychologically punishing. You are putting in the time, but the math refuses to reward you. Looking at this visual comparison chart for day 5, the deficit is obvious. On the left, simple interest has handed you 5 whole pizzas, 40 slices in total. On the right, your doubling compound interest has only managed to produce a measly pile of 16 slices. Our brains are hardwired to expect linear, straight-line progress. When we look at that tiny pile of 16 slices on day 5, we project that slow pace indefinitely into the future, and we interpret the math as a failure. The early stage of an exponential curve is a cognitive trap. It is entirely flat and visually unimpressive. But that flat line is deceptive by design. Let's push the timeline forward to day 10. This is exactly where the math hits an inflection point. This rapidly multiplying array shows what happens when compound interest catches up. By day 10, that single doubling slice has turned into 512 slices. That is 64 full pizzas, completely dwarfing the simple linear timeline. Fast forward just 5 more days to day 15. The math accelerates. You now have over 16,300 slices, the equivalent of more than 2,000 pizzas. Hit day 20, and you possess more pizza slices than everyone in a small town could eat in an entire year. You didn't add any extra ingredients. You didn't change the recipe. This escalation happens purely because the previous growth is now creating its own new growth. Now, replace the slices with dollars. Let's invest $1,000 and apply an 8% annual return, a standard historical average for the stock market. This graph charts time against wealth. You put your $1,000 in, and by the end of year 1, it inches up to $1,080, a total return of $80. The curve is completely, agonizingly flat, mirroring that boring single slice phase. But year 2 is where the mechanics shift. Your investment doesn't just earn another 8% on your original $1,000. It also earns 8% on that $80 return from year 1. The chain reaction begins. Jump the timeline to year 10. Your original $1,000 has quietly doubled to over $2,100. The flat line is finally showing a gentle upward curve. Surviving that sluggish, decade-long wait is the mandatory toll you have to pay. If you want access to the explosive side of the curve, you have to sit through the flat line. As we push the timeline into the later decades, the numbers move from modest growth to a vertical surge. By year 20, you cross $4,600. By year 30, you break past $10,000. Zooming out on this graph to encompass all 30 years, you can see the math take over. A single $1,000 input grew tenfold. You didn't lift a finger to earn that extra $9,000. The growth simply built upon itself. To see exactly how heavily this relies on the clock, we can run a stress test comparing 2 different starting ages. Look at these intersecting lines. An investor starting at age 25 with a small amount runs for 40 years, eventually sweeping entirely past a second investor who started at 35 with a larger chunk of cash, but only had 30 years to grow. A dollar invested on day 1 has 10 more years to double than a dollar invested on day 3,000. Time, ultimately, is the dominant variable. Simple interest is comfortable because it hands you the exact same pizza every single day. Compound interest is frustrating because it offers you a single tiny slice. But it's a slice that doubles. When older investors tell you how well their portfolios are doing, they aren't executing secret strategies. They simply refuse to quit during the flat line, and now they are living on the vertical part of the curve. The size of your initial investment does not matter nearly as much as capturing as many doubling days as possible. The best move you can make is to start early and trigger the time variable immediately.